Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to CogX Festival 2023. We've got a brilliant lineup over 3 days. By the way, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. So good to see so many friendly faces and newcomers to this festival as well. Been going for 7 years at CogX. And by the way, if you're tuning in online, welcome. Thank you for joining us, or if you're catching up. CogX, the festival that helps us think about the future, about technology, about artificial intelligence. And if you're in this session because it's your specialist subject, welcome. And if you're just passing by to learn more, you're even more welcome. So this particular stage and session is all about your questions. So that's the point. It features an entrepreneur, a co-founder, a CEO. In their back catalogue, Heavy.ai. Numerous different companies, in fact, including the exit of Codec.ai as well. But crucially, and literally hitting front pages and news headlines today, is Metaphysic. Now, Metaphysic is all about generative AI, immersive, highly photorealistic content. Let's meet its CEO now. Please give a CogX welcome to Tom Graham. Good to see you, Tom. Welcome to CogX. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Now, I think you've been up on our main stage already, so this is almost the post-match interview.
No, this is the fun part, yeah.
I don't think what you do was in the careers library when I was browsing 20-odd, 30-odd years ago. So very potted history. How did you get to be doing this?
I think literally the careers advisor at my high school said I should be an accountant, but I ended up being a lawyer.
Harvard, no less.
Yes, started in Australia, that's where I'm from, and did my graduate work at Harvard Law School. And that's all internet and society, big data related stuff. And so then I went back after being a lawyer, practicing a lawyer, to do a PhD, but instead started a technology company with a friend at MIT. And that became Heavy.ai, which is a company in San Francisco, a few more companies, and they're all focused on big data analytics, very intense compute problems, and big data. And so that leads to Metaphysic.
Yeah, so with origin stories, we always wonder, is it a eureka moment, the grain of an idea? Do you go back to anywhere in your mind with how that started?
I think that when you sit there and look at the prospect of doing a PhD in the US, which is a 7-year endeavor, and then the world is moving so fast and you have the chance to be involved with that, it's really interesting. And there is a lot of energy in a place like that around MIT, etc. And so getting sucked up in that, I think, was the slipstream.
But when it comes to generative AI, for example, was there something you were gazing at, something that sparked that flame?
There absolutely was. So the genesis story really of Metaphysic, from my perspective, was I was sitting on my couch at home and I'm watching TikTok, and this is during lockdown 2021. And I see on my phone there is a Tom Cruise hitting a golf ball. I'm like, okay, Tom Cruise is on TikTok, that's fun. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not real. That's a deep fake of Tom Cruise. It was posted by my now co-founder, Chris Ume, and created with another co-founder, Miles Fisher, who does the performance. But I saw it for the first time and I was fooled, along with hundreds of millions of other people. And I'd actually been tracking this space for a long time because it is in the same vein as other companies that I've built. But I thought, that photorealistic AI-generated content that would fool you if you looked at it into thinking that it's real. I thought that was 5-6 years away, but it was 5-6 months away.
It almost shocked you, and that's a
totally.
Show of hands, who's familiar with deepfake? Tom Cruise, okay. How do you feel about that phrase, deepfake?
I think that we kind of started in this space from a very, very beginning. So I don't have some of the negative connotations that go with it. I think of it in a very practical term. But I think that deepfake is a good way of describing something that feels a little bit unauthorized, right? Something that you could be a little bit worried about. There is photorealistic AI-generated content, which is more kind of the industry term for what we do. But we always focus on consent, who is having something created of them, and did they consent to that? Do they control what is happening? Sometimes I think it's worthwhile to think about deepfakes as being something that you don't want to happen, something that happens without your consent.
Yes. As vividly as possible, what you're doing is bringing, people often very well known to life in a hugely realistic way. So just to help us understand the range of what you've been doing, what would we have been seeing?
Yes, so you have that kind of performance from America's Got Talent where we brought Elvis back to life. So bringing somebody back to life based on training a model on historical footage is one thing. You can also de-age people and age people up. In movies today, we actually can recreate body performance, costumes, backgrounds, foregrounds. We can use a variety of different AI algorithms to create that really realistic content. You can apply these same technologies on top of game and game engines to create more realistic graphics that come out of games. You can really do anything because the models work with 2D images.
Yeah, so that's a flavour of what you have been doing, but why don't we just take just a couple more minutes before we take questions to imagine where this could go, is sort of the yes and part of the question. Where could it go? And this could be for entertainment, but it could also be in any field or industry.
Yes, so I think that 10 years from now, most of what we look at on our phones or on our screens is going to be AI-generated content. A lot of our interface with information and ourselves, our friends, is very straightforward because we're bandwidth and compute and content rendering constrained. But a lot of those restrictions are going to go away. So you're going to have more interesting content on your phone, and you might have immersive Zoom calls with, it look and feel exactly like we're here together, but it is not just like a little video on a screen. Yeah. You might go into a store and try on a jacket, but it's actually, your video of you trying it on with your body, and it looks perfectly real, rather than looking at a little picture. So I think that a lot of content, and then regular people will move into the content themselves.
Yeah. Now, one of the examples, and forgive me if you were just explaining this when we were just getting reset there, is where you are on stage or out and about, and somebody, another well-known person, is effectively superimposed over your face. Just so we understand the language, what is that known as, and where does that take us?
In industry terms, a kind of a face replacement. Yeah. So using the AI model to recognize a face and then put another face on top of it, that is how we might de-age somebody. That's how Deep Tom Cruise is created. Yeah. And it is conventionally a deepfake. So that is, it's interesting. We start there because everybody has faces, and it's very standardized from a data point of view. But everybody's dog looks kind of different. There are many different breeds. So it's hard to get the data to match up, etc. So faces are interestingly easier than some other things in the world to do.
So I don't want to I don't want to be too limited in understanding what your mission is at Metaphysic, because essentially, you're creating, individuals' personas, which traditionally may or may not have the consent of, the individual who you're impersonating, I suppose. But what else do you want to explore, or is it mainly how people appear?
So I think that our mission at Metaphysic is to build the technology and infrastructure to scale photorealistic content to everyone on Earth. And so it is what we look like, what we sound like, our bodies, our performance, the foregrounds, the backgrounds, our experiences. If you want to relive and interact with the experience of your child's first birthday party or your wedding, you can capture data from that and recreate it with AI.
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is we've got London Fashion Week next week. Is the Tom Cruise-y stuff just the sort of catwalk, catch everyone's attention piece? To what extent will that be the future of your business? Or is it going to be about us doing this for our families?
Yes, I think it will be about us doing it for our families and our lives. I think that we will probably collect data from our experiences of reality. And just like a photo album, we will keep that, and we'll be able to recreate those experiences.
Right. So I know that red flags will come up during our questions and answers. Why don't we blow it open now? Because I've got a million more questions myself. Who will ask our first question? I see you there. That's a good offer. And here, I'm looking around the whole space. Why don't we start back there, just by the pillar? Thank you. And then we'll come down. Feel free to say who you are. You don't have to.
Dr. Mandeep Rai, of the author of the Values Compass. Am I right in thinking you create deep fake? Is that right?
Deep fakes are a type of kind of generative AI output, and they normally describe a face replacement. And so we do a variety of face replacements, de-aging, all different types of outputs with generative AI. Generally, when people are concerned about deep fakes, they're concerned about unauthorized, non-consensual, using somebody's face to make an AI version without their consent. We don't do that.
So you always have consent?
Yeah, that's right.
So does that mean it's not deep fake because it is fake because it's fake, but you have consent, so it's consensual fake?
I think that the nomenclature is a little bit confusing. Deep comes from deep learning, the neural nets which are used, and fake is a catchy moniker for what it is. It's, in this case, the original ones were a face replacement, and they were faking something out. So whichever kind of language you use to describe it, ostensibly what you're doing is using that technology to create the content, but the core pillar of how you should do it is around the consent. Is the person whose likeness that you're using, do they consent to that being used?
So have you got into any kind of trouble before sitting in this chair at any point in this deepfake journey?
No, we are content creators, technologists, and we also lead the discussion around the ethics of how deepfakes and generative AI should be applied in a photorealistic sense. So you can make a caricature, a political cartoon or something like that that looks unrealistic. And that has a really important First Amendment and social purpose. But I don't think there is a fair use or a reasonable basis to use or create a photorealistic version of someone without their consent. And that really is the underpinning of our company.
Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you, Maddie. Good. I see lots of hands going up, but I did see the first hand here in a hat. And just show me those offers again, where the questions sit. Thank you. We'll make our way around. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nicole. What's your view on watermarking?
What type of watermarking do you mean?
If, for instance, someone doesn't manage to get an approval, and so it's just a way of making sure that you know that what you're looking at is not real.
So let's say there is positive labeling of content which has been manipulated with AI, and I think that people should do that when they actually change something with AI, and it could deceive somebody. I think the purpose is to not deceive a consumer or the public, and I think that should always happen. Same way that in a non-AI context, I think that where images of models, etc., which have been changed substantially with Photoshop, should be labelled as such to avoid unrealistic beauty expectations, etc., from young people. So I think that the use of technology to change imagery in order to not deceive a consumer, we should label that kind of thing. Same thing for AI, for sure.
Because Stephen Fry this morning was, I don't know whether you caught his talk, he was talking about the audio that was used that wasn't him speaking at all, taken from his reading of the Harry Potter books.
Yes, I think that this is wrong. I don't think that people should be able to create audio models of other people and create content that can be deceptively perceived by an audience to actually have been him speaking. This is where I get back to, if it's photorealistic or if you can mistake it with the real world, I do not know what the fair use, reasonable commercial basis, the ethical, moral basis is for actually creating that kind of thing. If it's a caricature, a cartoon, social commentary, but you can tell like it's a South Park character, then sure, that's free speech, that's reasonable. But if it looks perfectly like Oli and we can't tell the difference, I don't think it serves any social purpose apart from to potentially harm you as a person. Or
presumably, though, Tom, and forgive me, we'll get more questions, but presumably, there are certain very well-known people for whom their agents gave up on this long ago when they realised that keyrings and T-shirts were being sold on every street corner of the world with their image, and they said, let it all go. We will pick our battles, but not those. And the same is going to happen here.
I think that this is a little bit different. So in general, using someone's name, image, likeness without their consent, to the extent that it's a large commercial endeavour, they will come after you. But just kind of like things here and there, etc., it is a very static artifact of what that person is. We're talking about technology which gives someone the power to create a perfect version of you, saying or doing anything, where your mother, your friends, no one could tell the difference. And so that is a far greater technical capability than just like, say, putting Tom Cruise's picture on.
No, we are sort of Black Mirror-esque, isn't it? But why don't we take the next question here, and then we'll go back and then front. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I'm John Holmes, Managing Director at Advantage Creative, Creative Entrepreneurship Coach. So, Tom, on the main stage, and I'm taking this theme just a little further, I was really interested in what you were saying about how people might be able to own the IP in their own images in the digital realm. And can you just, obviously, industry is that there are industries who are not going to want to see that happen. There are going to be sort of filmmakers who want to be able to exploit actors, and there are actors who are worried about being exploited in this way. Can you describe a little more how actors in particular and people in general could take ownership or might be able to take ownership of their own IP in the digital realm?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it applies to regular people tomorrow as it applies to actors today. So you don't own any rights in how your voice sounds or how your face looks or your performance. That comes from nature. It's not intellectual property. You can't own it per se. The idea is that we create an AI version of you or an AI version of your voice, and that is a man-made work that has copyright attributed to it. So if you can own that AI version of you, this AI character, it happens to look exactly like you, then maybe you can kind of exert some of the rights which come with owning that property. And that is, if somebody infringes it, maybe there are remedies that you can seek there. But like with the Drake and the Weeknd rap song that blew up, and it wasn't really Drake or the Weeknd singing, it was an AI version of their voices. Drake actually had no legal basis to write the takedown because there was no infringement of the use of his voice, because they weren't copying work that he had previously done. They had creating a brand new version of him, a brand new performance, and it happened to sound exactly like him, but it's not him. Wow. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this is very provocative stuff. How about just here in the black t? Oh, the two in the black t-shirt aren't there, but the one further forward, please, and then I will pass it back. Okay. Why don't we take two at a time? That's fair, isn't it? Right, please.
Okay, Michael Hudson, I was wanting to know, is there a dialogue happening between you and others working in your sphere to basically work out safeguards in the terms of saying, first of all, the most obvious would be like child exploitation, but then also for extremists to say if you can bring people back from the dead, there are the people like Hitler and Osama bin Laden. Are those dialogues happening, and are there any agreements that are being put into place for safeguards in this area?
Great, good question. It's a huge question, but we'll take just one other because it's very unforgettable.
Yeah, I just want to ask, because I'm assuming you probably saw the John is Awful episode on Netflix. So since you're working on face replacement stuff, how far do you think it is that we will have our own version of John is Awful that is available on Netflix? And do you think that's something that, well, ethically speaking, is that right or wrong?
Yes.
Right, so what should we know about this episode? Just remind us.
So John is Awful is an episode on Netflix for the Netflix series Black Mirror, in which a woman that lives day-to-day life comes back home, and at the end of the day, there's a Netflix show that is ready that is exactly like her, played by Salma Hayek. And the whole plot of it is that she's trying to uncover what's going on and taking down the corporation that recreated the show without her permission.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so in terms of our industry and agreements and things which people are trying to put in place, the industry is relatively small, but it is generally a set of technology companies interacting with traditional content creators, and those two different worlds have different priorities. We are very, very focused on the ethics and building responsibly, and that in large part comes from our background. Many of the tech founders and builders in the space are interested in those things, but need as much help as they possibly can to actually put that into practice inside products. So there's a little bit of a fractured landscape. And this is why I kind of look to, say, copyright law, intellectual property law, things with actual substance, because there are no regulations or governing bodies which are out there, even internal working groups which are coherent across the industry, that enforce any sets of norms or anything like that. But there are certainly robust discussions among responsible technologists and company leaders about what is the right thing to do. And one of those things is like consent, not creating photorealistic AI-generated content or any kind of generated content for that matter without the consent of the subject. Joan is Awful is a really interesting representation of what could go wrong with this kind of thing. Ostensibly, this is at the core of what can go wrong for regular people. You sign terms of service with a big company to use their products. Somewhere buried in that terms of service is they get the right to use your name, image, likeness, your data to do whatever they want. That's what they do with your data today, right? cookie data, tracking data, etc. But if they could use your data to recreate a version of you saying or doing anything or being in an episode that streams to everyone around the world, that would not feel right to anybody in this room. So as we move towards the reality of this technology, what it can deliver, which maybe over the next 5 years or so you can start doing things like that. Terms of service, what companies do really needs to catch up.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic then?
At some point, yeah.
Let's come further down the front. Here we are, right front row, thanks.
My name is Rod Banner. Two of my colleagues are creating avatars based on celebrities. And it's kind of fascinating to me that it's possible, as you've demonstrated so beautifully, that you can now create a physical, or should I say, a photorealistic version of a celebrity that's pretty good. Do you know anybody who's, if you like, trying to create the brand of a celebrity? And I can't think of a better way of describing it, but the characteristics that would enable an avatar to respond in the same way that the real person would, the same language, the same body, and face movements.
Based on an existing celebrity or a brand new from scratch
Beyonce
celebrity?
Or someone who is very well established, but for example, can't respond to all the people who want to engage with her on social media.
Yeah, so we're talking about a few different things. How they look and how they sound is...
You can do that part.
Yeah, that's relatively straightforward. The brains of the operation, as it were, the performance, is much, much harder. So the ways in which people try to do this today is to train a version of ChatGPT on the large corpus of what, say, Beyonce has ever said in her life, etc. It is possible, but it's not very authentic feeling today. And people are working on similar things, but they're not quite there. Those chatbots are quite limited ultimately. And then you have the content moderation problem, which is people start prompting the version of a celebrity and they start saying increasingly problematic things because people can get those things out of the chatbots.
If you want to know what Piers Linney, British entrepreneur, former Dragon, thinks, you may consult his Piers bot, which mines his LinkedIn posts, his articles, his books that he's written, and will answer accordingly. Perhaps another question from somewhere else in the space. Right on the back row. Yes.
Hey, I'm Tilda Says. I also work for a cyberclone. I do PR for them, and we also create digital clones of real talents. So I would like to ask the future of the company, of the Metaphysics. Is it going to be more like a production-focused company, or are you guys, since you're talking about copyrights and royalties about real talents, digital clones, is it going to be more like a digital talent agency? What's the direction of the company?
I think our goal is to create the technology and the infrastructure, and you don't know what technology to build unless you can create the content and the experience. And you can't create the content and the experience unless you have access to the data to train the models. So they're all highly integrated problems, but yeah, we're definitely focused on the technology.
Thank you.
Looking around the space, I see you just there in the second row. If we can just get that forward, please.
Hi, my name's Drew, and I built a company that was detecting fake news. And one of the things that you were saying just now was around getting the deepfake technology to a point where you can't really... There's just about enough that you know that it's not completely photorealistic. Is that a discussion that's happening in this kind of in your field now? And what would that look like, right? What safeguards would you have that you have some of these markers in place that you know that it's still a fake?
Yeah, so not very many people can create the genuinely photorealistic stuff where you can't tell the difference. We do not have a platform where people can come to us and create whatever they want that is photorealistic. So that's one obvious safeguard. You don't open that platform up like the stable diffusion engines, etc. Stable diffusion engines, they're quite memey or cartoony, and they're becoming increasingly photorealistic. So I think that, we have problems there when you can create photorealistic AI-generated video and anybody can do it, because political misinformation, pornography, child pornography, etc., are things that people do. We don't open up platforms like that. I think there needs to be regulation to help with some of those problems.
Well, on that, what is your view of the use of technologies like metaphysics for electioneering politicians around the world?
I think that it is very problematic for anybody to try to manipulate any kind of democratic process.
Isn't that what campaigning is?
Well, I guess that's right. If a politician wants to create an AI version of themselves and they consent to it and it is not appropriating someone's likeness, and they want to create more content or a chatbot version of themselves, that all seems fine.
Would it have to be labelled fake Joe Biden?
Yes, I think that should happen, yeah. There are two elements to that. One, you don't want to alienate your audience. If you try to pass something off, the audience never likes that. And the second, I think that photorealistic AI-generated content should always be labelled.
So a party using the image of someone from the opposition.
Without their consent, I wouldn't do it.
How about a photo of someone from the opposition?
Well, if you own the copyright to it, then you should be able to reproduce it.
Because I guess one of the challenges for our audience might be that you are, I mean, I think super engaging, pretty cool, in the exterior, I mean, as in chilled. And with your Harvard law background, there's a sort of certainty or confidence on the law. What are you least certain about in terms of where you're going?
So I think that something that worries me is kind of like that Joan is awful situation. Regular people, will we store our data from our lives, our face, who we are, what makes us uniquely human, our memories, our experience? Will we store it ourselves and control it? Or will we outsource that to a company that may want to use it for something or may have certain rights to it? I think that future, we're at a fork in the road and we need to choose a good path, because it can become quite strange and dystopian. Yeah. As I mentioned on stage, I think that kids in school in the future will learn history, our history from today, from recorded events, by reliving AI versions of them. Whoever controls that data controls our knowledge, our history, what we value.
So I'm scanning for questions, but I want you to tell me very briefly about recent news involving Tom Hanks. What is the latest?
Recently, Metaphysic, we launched our platform Metaphysic Pro, which is a platform to empower individuals to own and control their data. Tom Hanks happens to be one of the early users of that with Anne Hathaway and others.
So what's he going to be doing with his likeness?
So today, actors, performers, just like the rest of us, they don't really own and control the data which is used to create the AI versions of themselves. But this gives them the opportunity to do that, to own it from themselves, to control it, to license it out, to refine it into AI usable data sets, and then ultimately to protect it through that copyright mechanism that we've been talking about.
Very topical with the writer's strikes. I think I saw a hand right at the back. It could be our final question, I'm afraid.
Hello, my name is Mustafa Osbeck. I also work for Cyberclone. My question is, do you guys use Deepface Lab and Deepface Live? And I was wondering if you guys use the Tom Hanks model as a default, or did you guys train it, and how was that process for you?
So my co-founder, Chris Ume, and some of the other people who have since joined the company are some of the earliest members of the community creating generative AI and deepfakes. And for a long time, there is a very limited set of open source tools, and some of the ones you mentioned are among those. Metaphysic, we specialize in building the technology, etc., and we only use data sets which are that we build from a license point of view, etc.
No, good question. I see a friend in the audience. I won't say your name in case you don't want to.
I'm Helen Keegan. With the Tom Hanks example, will it be body doubles doing the physical stuff? And what happens to jobbing actors?
Yes, that's one of the examples. In the movie that we're working on there, it's actually Tom Hanks playing himself, just the younger version of himself.
There was a movie like that.
Yes, it's coming to a cinema near you at some point.
In reverse.
So that's, not anybody being replaced per se. For a long time, studios have recreated extras, etc., using traditional VFX. I am concerned that trend will continue with AI, which is why I think it's really critically important that actors all the way from Tom Hanks to extras own and control their data and have more agency over their... You start with the data because that's what you need to create the AI likeness. So if you own that property, at least you have a footing in this negotiation and wherever the industry is going.
I think we don't have time for it today, Tom, but there is a problem here with language, isn't there? Because in so much of what we're talking about a representation of something in the same way that a cartoon or caricature might be. And yet the word fake seems to be historically a word we use to describe something which isn't what it claimed to be.
Yep.
And there's a distinction between those two things, isn't there? Which
Yes.
probably isn't helping the progress of your cause.
Yes, I think that you have consent and labeling. These are things that can be applied to move this way of creating content away from kind of being a fake. And there is a lot of public awareness around the concept of deepfakes, and I think that that's really good, because we should all be worried about what a future looks like where anyone can create a version of us saying or doing anything. I think that human experience, that emotion of worry and concern, is really important to how we make decisions.
Because the doom mongers would say that if we can no longer believe our eyes and ears, then that is the beginning of where society starts to break down.
Yes, though I think that this has been a constant refrain through the history of media, starting with the Gutenberg Bible, moving through photographs, moving pictures, etc. There is a step function change here in our ability to create content and make it look real. That's the first time that we can do this. But I think that as a society and as people, we're going to have tools to deal with that.
Right. Final question. Actually, not from me, from the back, please.
Yeah, thanks for your great talk. My name is Jip Samhout, and I was wondering, just in a bit of a vision of your company, like where do you expect, like let's say in 5 years, where the majority of your turnover in your company would come from? What's your vision there?
So I think that we will be creating content, movies, AI concerts, things like that. That'll be a large part of it. And I hope that a large part will also come from helping people own and control their data and empowering them to do that. So kind of create the content and then the data layer down the bottom. And also help people train models, and that may be corporates, etc. Those two things.
Brilliant, brilliant question. I think I am going to sneak my money, but I think that's in the red. So in bank terms, that doesn't look good to me. But I'll say in a 20-second answer: dream collaborators. Who would you love to work with?
Taylor Swift, Beyonce. I think that stuff around live concerts and music is really, really exciting. There's something about seeing something live happen on stage. It's kind of like magic. That I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic. Well, Tom, thank you, by the way, for being just so open, so generous with your time today. And it feels like the moral maze lies ahead, but also some phenomenally huge opportunities. So thank you very much indeed, Tom Graham.
Thank you.